My name's Kathy Sherrington. I'm delighted to be hosting this meeting to celebrate 25 years of PEDro, the Physiotherapy Evidence Database. And so I'd first just like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this meeting on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all work and meet today, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who might be participating in the meeting. And we pay our respects to elders past and present, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people.
We're going to move on next to Dr. Rick Dawson. I think it's really important. I think without that, the APA, that initial support and ongoing support, PEDro wouldn't be where it is today. Rick.
Such a big photo of me, so let's move on, shall we? So I'm here on behalf of the Australian Physiotherapy Association, and I speak on behalf of all the leaders of the APA over the last 25. I think Fiona McKinnon was the APA president in 1999 that was a principal supporter of the concept of PEDro, right to myself next year as the incoming president of the APA. I've just got back from the World Physio Conference, the Asia West Pacific in Bali. I've been on a cultural immersion, and I can see where PEDro has made such a difference in us understanding research and looking towards 2025 and the need to develop our reconciliation action plan. We see PEDro as a vital resource to supporting us in closing the gap. The APA has a career pathway, and we want to support physiotherapists from their postgraduate professional development, right from their, as we heard before, new graduates in their year one, right through to the specialisation process with the Australian College of Physiotherapy. And we see our profession as an evidence-based profession, and we think PEDro is crucial for us physios to access and implement research so we can make a difference with the patients' lives. We recently supported PEDro in developing the Level 3 evidence-based physiotherapy practice course to aid physiotherapists on their path to titling and specialisation. And it's a course that features short online lectures and resources to help our members identify quality research and using it for clinical decisions. And the APA encourages all our career pathway candidates to become PEDro Raters, as we believe that this supports our candidates in understanding what quality research is and is a key to their future career success. We know that PEDro has supported many specialist physiotherapists to achieve their success. We've also used PEDro from an advocacy point of view. As you can see on this slide, we've developed many clinical guidelines and advocacy reports, and we couldn't have done this without PEDro and their ability to get access to our team and develop these guidelines to influence the future of the physiotherapy. So we just want to say we have been a principal supporter of PEDro, and we will continue to be one. So just to sum up, we've got a few APA members online, and I just want to reach out to a few of them. We have the Vice President of the Australian College of Physiotherapists, Dr. Jen McClashen, who is a specialist women's, men's and pelvic health physio. We've also got Tamara Rowan, who's the head of the college, and we've also got Janine Fleming, who is one of the key workers under the Physiotherapy Research Foundation, and all of them have been great supporters of PEDro. So we just want to say, on behalf of the APA, thank you, PEDro, for helping physiotherapy remain a quality health profession in our landscape. Thank you.
So I'm an avid PEDro user. So I've used PEDro as a clinician, but also as an academic and as a researcher. So I think PEDro is important because I think it helps me to locate the high quality evidence in a shorter time. Then that would of course influence what I teach and also influence the treatments that are being delivered.
Community is really important, and physiotherapists form a great community. So I'm sure many people will kind of get it when I say you always know somebody somewhere. So we have a great community of practitioners, and I think that's the first thing I like about PEDro. It's, you know, focused in to our community, and it's selecting evidence that's appropriate to our community.
We're awash with all kinds of dodgy journals out there. So to have a trusted resource to go to where you can reliably access knowledge around what is the evidence, what is reliable evidence for this condition, I think is absolutely critical. But actually to have an independent body that's not got vested interest to say, hey, what is the evidence for this? That's so important for us as a profession, and for clinicians to go, I can trust this as a source of reliable, accurate knowledge.
So I think what strikes me looking at something like that is just how big PEDro has become and how influential it is today. And I think that's something that it is really a lot of credit on, particularly the people who got it up and running in the first place. And I think it's just amazing. Speaking of that history, here's a little bit more of it.
At one stage in the School of Physiotherapy at the University of Sydney, lecturers were given the opportunity to run elective subjects, and I ran one on using clinical trials to make clinical decisions. The assignment for it required that students go and find 3 clinical trials on a question of their interest and critically appraise them. So over the period of several years, I accrued several hundred randomised trials. So I remember talking to Kathy about it, and we thought, oh, this is a pretty valuable resource. We could do something with this. And we put our heads together and we decided that there's this new thing called the internet, and we might put it on the internet. And we put it on a PC in the lab and got PEDro up and running.
I think I realised when I travelled, because I could be in places in South America and people wouldn't know who I was. But once you mentioned PEDro, you know, their eyes would light up and things would warm. And so, yeah, I guess I realised at that point in time, we'd created something which had global recognition, which is, you know, pretty extraordinary. And so that was probably within 5 or so years of developing PEDro. So it's amazing that you could reach all these different parts of the world so quickly.
I really realised we were onto a good thing when 2 organisations really helped us, the Australian Physiotherapy Association and also the Motor Accidents Authority of New South Wales. And they provided seed funding for us to get started, which was really pivotal. But more importantly, they provided some recurrent funding, and the Australian Physiotherapy Association is still an important funder of PEDro. And it was their vision for wanting to improve patient outcomes and not having to get something out of it, like it was the philanthropic doing something good for physiotherapy in New South Wales, Australia and the world, that they really invested in it.
I think for me, the most mind-blowing thing was when Anne started working out how to actually record the statistics from the website. And then we really realised, you know, how many countries around the world were actually using PEDro and the absolute number of users.
We started off having 50 concurrent users. And so now there's a new search initiated every 10 seconds, and it's used across the globe. So, for example, in countries that are experiencing quite a lot of hardship at the moment, like the Ukraine, physiotherapists are still using PEDro to guide practice. And so hopefully we're influencing the quality of care in countries that are really struggling because of other issues.
Many physiotherapists won't realise that as recently as the 1990s, really there was very little research going on in physiotherapy. And I think PEDro had a role in turning that around and making people look specifically at evidence of the effectiveness of interventions rather than just at the mechanisms or hypothesised mechanisms behind things.
My proudest moment with PEDro was when I was awarded the Mildred Elson Award by the then World Confederation for Physical Therapy in 2019. And I received the award because of my contribution to physiotherapy because of PEDro. And I feel like I was hogging the limelight there because the real star of the show was PEDro. PEDro winning this amazing prestigious award was a great validation of the importance of PEDro globally.
To me, another factor in the kind of global engagement is the number of different languages that the website has been translated into. And that's, again, Anne's hard work with making connections from people all around the world to, volunteer to actually translate elements of the website.
Yeah, and for us, that's an international expression of people's goodwill and their enthusiasm and altruism.
I think to me, the most amazing feedback has been when we've attended the World Physiotherapy Congresses, and we hold stalls on PEDro at those congresses, and the number of people who genuinely come up from countries all around the world and talk about how they've contributed to PEDro or how they're using PEDro and how PEDro makes a difference in their practice is quite mind-blowing.
Well, the challenge is that we've got an exponential growth in research, which in one way is good, but it then makes the cost of running PEDro quite high and growing exponentially each year, which you would understand. And so I think that is the challenge. You have to look to technology to provide the solution to that challenge. Obviously we can't turn off research. That'd be a pretty silly way to solve the problem. So really we've got to get a technological solution so that we can archive and synthesize and make available the evidence. And so it's on that side of the equation that we need to get something happening.
I'm Birger Hagen. I've been a clinical physiotherapist for some years and a researcher for many years. And I'm now a director of reviews and health technology assessment at the Norwegian Institute of Public Health. I am very happy to have this opportunity to celebrate the 25th anniversary of PEDro. I'm so old that I can still remember when 4 young academic physiotherapists, Rob Herbert and Mosley, Kathy Sharrington and Chris Meyer, launched the PEDro. In the very early years stages, it seems like a valuable resource, and I can still remember I met up with Rob and Ian Chalmers in Oxford when Rob enthusiastically told about this resource, and Ian at that time was very happy to support. I think he gave some substantial contribution to the PEDro at that time. But since then, of course, many people have contributed to make it grow. It has now been a crucial supporter of the physiotherapists, and I would add other health professions as well, globally. And it's obviously support clinicians who seek to use the best available evidence. It supports clinical trialists who need to know what is been investigated. And from my perspective here, it supports systematic reviewers by providing the most comprehensive coverage of trials of physiotherapy interventions. And I will say that the PEDro goes beyond the interest of physiotherapists only. We use the resource in our work, and it's a very comprehensive and valuable resource for us. And of course, last but not at least, it supports clinicians who want to get better evidence-based practice. In addition, the PEDro team have published many papers that give important feedback to the profession about where they can improve the methods and reporting of trials and reviews, which is very important. And I will say, as an old researcher now, it has said PEDro has set very high standards for how to report and improve methods, or improve methods and not at least reporting trials. So I will say both congratulations and a warm thank you to all the volunteers and hard workers who have been involved in maintaining PEDro for so long. Very, very well done. Congratulations.
All right. So today I'll talk a little bit about the resource that PEDro has been developed over the last 25 years. So I thought it would be great to start thinking a little bit about the physiotherapy as a profession. And so we all know the challenge we face to implement evidence-based practice, but also we also know that the patient outcome and the success of the treatment really depend on this. So aiming to inform physiotherapy practice, PEDro has lots of very interesting and important resources available. For today's presentation, I decided to share some key milestones, but of course, PEDro offers much more, and you can always check the other resources available on the website. The first one that I would like to talk is the database itself. So the database is really the backbone of PEDro. It's like the library for physiotherapy evidence, and at the beginning, it was just a pile of printed articles, as I've heard. But today we have more than 63,000 systematic reviews, trials, and guidelines. PEDro's reach is huge in terms of how it has been used over the globe, and PEDro is accessed by more than 215 countries with more than 10,000 daily searches, and with one search every 10 seconds. The second milestone is the PEDro scale. This is like a report card for research. If the database is the library, then the scale is kind of the librarian, ensuring that you find the best research available. The third one, I would say, is all the training program and different campaigns, including video tutorials that PEDro provide, but I choose two to be mentioned here today. The first one is the PEDro Tackle Barriers campaign that aimed to hear about physios complaints, to use evidence-based practice, and to provide insights on how to break down those barriers. And the second one is the PEDro scale training that teach how to assess physiotherapy trials for methodological quality. And if you're not familiar with that, you can just scan this QR code, and it's going to take you to the PEDro scale training page. And the last one, but not least, is the World Wide Journal Club. So the Journal Club was launched in 2020, and it's been a great success in generating discussion around the latest research for a certain field. So key studies addressing important gaps in evidence are selected, and then discussion is generated to explore how we can implement those insights to improve care. So PEDro has changed the future of physiotherapy, impacting physiotherapy practice globally. And I would like to show you some examples of this. So the first one, I think, is really the internationalization. So today, PEDro speaks 17 languages, and this means that physiotherapists all around the world can access evidence-based resources in their native language. This may sound trivial, but we should probably remember that language is one of the biggest barriers to assess and use evidence-based practice. So this is a huge achievement. The second one is the evidence in your inbox. This is probably the easiest way to keep you updated. So PEDro can send you all the new evidence on a specific area of your choice. And through this QR code, you'd just be directed to the evidence in your inbox subscription page if you're not familiar with it. And again, last but not least, the newsletter. So the newsletter brings information on the latest developments and research. So to finish, I would like to say that from those 5 very smart people, we are now a huge community. And today, I think more than a PEDro collaborator, I'm here as a Brazilian physiotherapist that recognize how PEDro has changed the profession and the professionals, especially in my country, in the past 25 years. It's amazing to see how PEDro provides resources that are vital for a better clinical practice. And so today, I would like to thank you all and to ask for us all to continue to hold hands and keep PEDro alive. Thank you.
So if you go to the PEDro Resources page, you'll find papers published by the PEDro team under these headings. So some look at how PEDro can help with evidence-based practice, others analyse the content of PEDro, others analyse the usage of PEDro or the PEDro scale. And people often like to see how these things accumulate over time. So initially, for the first few years, things accumulated slowly. There was mainly papers on the whole content of PEDro or on evidence-based practice. There was one on core journals in physiotherapy and one on the PEDro scale. And then after that first decade, things really took off and started accumulating more and more quickly. There was a lot done on randomized trials and trial quality. There was ones on DiTA and systematic reviews and so on. Okay, so this shows things accumulating slowly for the first decade and then faster after that. So from that timeline, I just want to feature a few papers. The first one is the first paper ever published about PEDro. Coincidentally, there was the size of the database when this very first paper was published was 1/25 of what it is now on its 25th birthday. The next paper that I want to talk about was this one, which was published by, again, the 4 initiators of PEDro, which was done in response to when we encouraged people to go and read trials. People said, oh, the trials all show that physiotherapy is ineffective. And so this was showing that there was evidence in each subdiscipline of physiotherapy showing effective interventions. We sometimes get the same sort of criticism today or response today about systematic reviews. So we're also looking at systematic reviews in physiotherapy and trying to show that more of them are becoming conclusive over time. The next paper is this one, which is about the reliability of the PEDro scale, which has been cited over 5,000 times. And that's because it's being used in more and more systematic reviews and now going beyond physiotherapy into speech pathology and pharmacology and all sorts of other areas. Then there's a whole stack of studies that you might call grumpy report card studies, where we've looked at the quality or the reporting or the registration of studies in physiotherapy and found them to be not as good as they could be. Fortunately, we've often come back and looked at these same issues or similar issues over time, and what we can see is that there is an improvement in those criteria over time. So that's gratifying. Another, some of these report card papers have gone on to spawn initiatives within the profession. So this one looked at the use of 95% confidence intervals and how many trials weren't using them. And so that got the interest of the journal editors, and they made a campaign to encourage people to use confidence intervals. And what we've seen is a steady improvement in the proportion of trials that report confidence intervals. So if you want to do one of these sort of studies that uses the content of PEDro as its fodder, as its units for analysis, then send me an email and we can send you a template to fill in just to make sure we get you the data that you need. Okay, thanks very much.
The training was great. It was easy to follow. It took me through each of the steps in a time that suited me, and I was able to do it from the comfort of my own home.
It was self-paced, so I could pause and repeat content as much as I liked at any time. There was also support from the PEDro team if I had any queries throughout the training.
I could do it from where I live in rural South Australia, I could do it from the city. Being a PEDro Rater is a really great way to improve my understanding of research and really sustain and build on how these papers apply to my patients. Being a PEDro Rater has been a really rewarding way to contribute to the physiotherapy research profession.
Everyone has the potential to be a PEDro reviewer. I recommend all of my HDR students become involved as PEDro reviewers, and I've even had some undergraduate students get involved too.
Yeah, hello, welcome everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to say some words here at this great event. Coming from a personal perspective, when I started my professional training in 1997, there was no word in Germany about evidence-based practice in physiotherapy. And I then qualified in 2000, starting to read my first papers and questioning some of what I had been taught. And somebody told me PEDro was there, but to be honest, I didn't know what to make of this information, really. So 1 year later, I entered the first CPD training courses that have been offered in Germany with regards to evidence-based practice skills. And this was difficult. To identify relevant papers, I needed to use the one desktop computer in range, which had a stable internet connection. There was no mobile phones or whatever. And my grasp of research methodology in a foreign language was really limited. But PEDro was there. And then I went on in my professional career and became a practicing specialist, which simultaneously increased my need to identify papers of both relevance and quality. And how cool would it be to become one of those people who were actually able to rate trials according to the PEDro scale, to become a PEDro Rater? And PEDro was there. A little while later, after taking on a role as lecturer, I was keen to share my understanding of PEDro as a valuable resource with for my German colleagues. But I noticed that many of them had some difficulties in terms of the language. So wouldn't it be great to have some of the PEDro key features accessible in German? And PEDro was there. And over the years, I've seen many students utilizing PEDro for their studies and thesis. And however, more and more questions came up on how to identify high quality papers covering areas that may not really have been included in PEDro, such as diagnostic tests. And then at some point, I was able to answer, well, but PEDro is there. Moving on to become a professional advisor for the German Physiotherapy Association, well, it is only natural to receive queries on our association's expenses from time to time, and supporting PEDro does come up in this regard. But however, I'm always looking forward to this because this is a very easy one. Wherever I go in Germany, there will be a colleague who shares my journey with PEDro. As an association, we have incorporated PEDro in many projects, and today, for every year, I have approximately 200,000 examples from Germany of somebody raising a question and somebody else saying, wait a minute, PEDro is there. So on behalf of the German Physiotherapy Association, I would very much like to thank everybody involved with PEDro, the founders, the staff, the volunteers and other supporters for the great work they've done over the past 25 years. And during this quarter of a century, from our perspective here in Germany, PEDro has become an indispensable institution in global physiotherapy. And we are very much looking forward to what we can achieve together in the future.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along and for the the fabulous support, and how wonderful to hear about the history. And really, it has taken a global village. So these are some of our financial partners over the years. These are just our volunteer raters from 2024. Here's some of our other collaborators. The slide's a little bit slow. And here's various committees are also involved, and really looking to the future. As Chris said, the things are quite challenging. The size of the job gets bigger all the time, and we're really keen to sort of explore different aspects, different solutions, looking at AI, exploring new partnerships. We're open to advertising. We're happy to have advertising from around the world. So, really we'd love, your ongoing assistance as we take this next step and, really work and move towards the future. And so, here we are. We've got a code here, and we'll also send out the link as well. So, if people are able to sort of fill in a quick survey to sort of let us know what yourselves or others in your organisation, might be able to do to sort of further help PEDro. But we're incredibly grateful for everyone's contributions today and over the last 25 years. So thanks again.
I'm Michael Peng from Hong Kong, the chair of the World Physiotherapy Asia Western Pacific region. It's an honor for me to join the celebration of the 25th anniversary of PEDro. 25 years is certainly a very important milestone, and I'd like to congratulate the PEDro team for all the amazing work that you have done. PEDro has made tremendous contributions to the advancement of the physiotherapy profession by providing free and global access to the best physiotherapy evidence. During my time as the president, the Hong Kong Physiotherapy Association was always committed to making yearly contributions to support the work of PEDro. At a more personal level, I, as a researcher, and my research students use PEDro a lot in our day-to-day work. We really appreciate what PEDro has offered us. Once again, congratulations, and I certainly look forward to an even more successful 25 years ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alice Jones. I'm very privileged to be given this opportunity to celebrate the 25th anniversary of PEDro with you all. I still remember my first meeting with Professor Rob Herbert when he and his team visited the Hong Kong Polytechnic University over 20 years ago. Well, I can say quite categorically that anyone wanting to be involved in rehabilitation, research, and practice, PEDro is the must-go-to site. PEDro is far more than our search engine. The way that PEDro ranks the quality of scientific reports results in improved accuracy and efficiency of data analysis. And in countries such as China, where the skills in physiotherapy research is still at an early developmental stage, PEDro highlights the importance of the conduct and clear recording of a randomization process. Working with colleagues in China, it is quite clear that the impact of PEDro on research in China has been huge. Through public seminars run by Professors Rob Herbert and Mosley and Mark Elkins, PEDro is now known to many professionals in China. To be fair, however, there are many users in China that are still unaware of the how to optimize the use of PEDro, and unaware of the fantastic tutorials and courses and resources available on the PEDro site. Many colleagues in China have expressed their wish for a more formal introduction to these auxiliary functions. With the advancing development of social communication media in China, I can easily envisage a mega online seminar run by PEDro, potentially benefiting hundreds and thousands of researchers in China. I look forward to more public educational seminars run by PEDro, and I believe this is an important step to raise the standard of research globally. Thank you.
We need a lot of evidence to kind of, to support the place of us physios, specifically in the health system and in the rehabilitation aspect specifically as well. Then we also have the South African Journal of Physiotherapy, which we subsidize, and obviously then PEDro plays a very important role there as well, specifically for our physios who are not in the academic environment, because they don't always have that ease of access to journals, and open access articles. So they use a lot the PEDro database as well to help them with the evidence. Specifically in this area of, evidence-based practice, we can't really do anything without supplying the evidence. I think PEDro has really supported us quite a lot.
Well, congratulations. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I was trying to think a little bit about what I might say. So I wanted to take a step back, actually, and really think about the contents of PEDro. We've heard a lot about PEDro, the database, but less about actually what's in there and what does it mean. So like other people on this call, I started my career at a time when the internet was just emerging, email, barely heard of. I mean, that was something Americans had, not us. That was the time when PEDro started. It was also the time when physiotherapists started to ask themselves about, does their practice work? So I started my first clinical job in Oxford, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, well, it was amazingly good and bad. So when I went into clinical practice, I was struck by the hours of chest percussion on people who'd had kidney replacement 4 times a day, no evidence whatsoever that it prevents anything. And it was mind-numbingly boring as far as I was concerned when I started my career. So, I really kind of questioned whether physiotherapy works. And then this guy turned up on the trauma ward, Professor David Sackett, and he is the godfather of evidence-based medicine. He turned up with his trolley of books. In those days, you could kind of carry books round, journals round in books, and he'd ask at the end of the bed, what's the evidence for this treatment? So that was the beginning of the evidence-based movement. And I think it really stimulated many of us in physiotherapy to start thinking about how do we curate and generate. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the generation. I'll come back to the curation. Generate high quality evidence about practice. And I have to say our profession has been unbelievably excellent in doing this. We certainly in the UK, and I don't see why it would be any different anywhere else. We have collectively generated extremely high quality evidence of our practice. I am now able to believe myself in, kind of really vast areas of practice. I'm able to know that if I spend my time doing this with a patient, there is a good chance that they are going to benefit from it, and I can choose what I do. But our profession has absolutely cracked it. And what's included in PEDro is the most unbelievably rich resource of clinical trials, reviews, and very high quality clinical guidance. And PEDro encapsulates what I think is the achievement of our profession. So well done to PEDro. Thank you for curating. Thank you for making sure that this is all accessible, and incredibly well done to the profession for generating this level of evidence and for us to be able to showcase, share and improve patient outcomes through this evidence base. So congratulations, PEDro. Happy birthday.
So first of all, happy birthday, PEDro. 25 years, it's a great time. Still young, but full of energy. So thank you for the invitation to share a few words about the French activity. So as I said, from PEDro and the SFP, the French National Physiotherapy Association, it's kind of friendship since many years, and we always tried to involve a lot of French physio to be in some project regarding PEDro. So over the years, since 2010, a little bit, we have some translation project like the PEDro scale in French, who was validated. And then we increased the lecture to the students, and now the PEDro scale is taught to pretty much every school of physiotherapy in France, which is about 50 schools, which is great. And this improved the level of our students when they become physio, and that helped us to implement research project and research program after the entry level. So now the research in physiotherapy in France is growing, and this is because of PEDro. So thank you for that. It's really important for us. So here is actually the photo of the small French PEDro group that is involved in the SFP, in the French Physiotherapy Association. So it's a small group, but every year more and more people get involved, and we launch different projects. So for example, we had translation of the training program ongoing. We also translate the infographic for students that it's spread in all different physio school. And now we try to have a group of people involved to be PEDro indexer, which will be a next step. And we plan to maybe one day being strong enough to be a satellite in France. And this couldn't be done without the lot of help that PEDro gave us, and the regular meeting we have with Geraldine or with Katie. So it's really, really great, and thank you for all that. And I hope PEDro will grow and continue to do that and to help us.
Yeah, so I'm Arno Tijssen. I'm a policy worker for the Knowledge Center of the Royal Dutch Society of Physiotherapy. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate PEDro on this beautiful 25th anniversary. Thank you for the invitation to celebrate this significant milestone with you all together. The Royal Dutch Society of Physiotherapy has been a partner of PEDro since 2010, and we're very proud to have made a contribution to the growth of this invaluable resource. So very happy. The PEDro work and its database are of great value and plays a crucial role in critically appraising and applying evidence-based knowledge for physiotherapists. And in the Netherlands, it's mostly widely used in education, supporting students and educators in accessing high quality information for learning and practice. And I've learned from Kim that with over 42,000 searches conducted in the Netherlands in the past year, we've been in the top 15 users of PEDro for over a decade. So that's wonderful news for us, and I'm very happy that it's widely used in the Netherlands. We deeply value our long-standing collaboration with PEDro, including the current involvement of Dr. Philip van der Wees. He's a Dutch professor, and he's in the advisory board of PEDro. And although an attempt to establish a Dutch satellite proved a little bit too challenging a short while ago. Hopefully we can have it another go in the near future, but PEDro remains an indispensable tool for us, and it empowers Dutch physiotherapists to focus their time on applying latest and best evidence rather than spending time on searching it. So it has profoundly impacted physiotherapy, and we look forward for the many more successful years of PEDro. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my experiences and with PEDro. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Rob and Chris and Kathy on their original ideas and inception and hard work to start PEDro, and the Australian Physiotherapy Association for supporting their ideas. You're young, but you have come so far, PEDro. It is wonderful to see. And my first encounters with PEDro came in the early 2000s, but more specifically in 2004, I was tasked with the job of organizing a physiotherapy session at the Pre-Olympic Congress in Thessaloniki in Greece. And the Australian Physiotherapy Association supported me in organizing 2 specific physiotherapy sessions at that international conference. And one of the sessions included a talk by Mark Brown on the use of PEDro. And that was the first time many of the physiotherapists, especially in Greece, had heard about PEDro, and they became very excited. And after that, they wanted to know how to use it more. And so that was really exciting for us to be able to share that and see their excitement and be able to implement it. Then down the track, I was a coordinator for a Masters of Sports and Exercise Physiotherapy program. And as part of that, as part of my students' research involvement, I organized and negotiated with PEDro that they would all become PEDro Raters. And I'm actually very proud to see that one of them featured in your video before, the PEDro video before, saying how much that graduate physiotherapists, sports physiotherapists said they enjoy being raters for PEDro. So thank you again for that opportunity. And more recently as well, in being supervising honor students and conducting systematic reviews, I also encourage them and organize for them to become PEDro Raters so that they can be then qualified when they're doing they're rating their trials as part of their systematic reviews. So I think it's important for us as users of PEDro to train the next generation, to train them how to use it effectively and how to implement it so that we can benefit not just all the physiotherapists and the clinicians and researchers, but also the wider community. So again, thank you, PEDro, for this opportunity, and thank you for all your work. Thank you to the PEDro team, and happy birthday.
As Chair of World Physiotherapy South America region, I want to congratulate PEDro teams on this incredible achievement. It's only 25 years, almost the same amount of time since the widespread use of internet in America Latina. So we can imagine that this is a lot of times. The scientific production in Latin America, as you can imagine, is very heterogeneous. Brazil is the leading producer, followed by Chile, Colombia, Venezuela, and then Argentina. So, of course, we are now in our social networks supporting PEDro database, and I invite everyone to buy a coffee to PEDro to follow this great system. Thank you.
So thanks again for the invitation.
Great.
I'm very pleased to be here today. So, and thanks again for giving me the chance to acknowledge the outstanding contribution PEDro have had for the past 25 years. I'm actually very proud to be part of an organization dedicated to fostering collaboration and advancing knowledge dissemination that really improves the quality of care physical therapists provide worldwide. And as someone who also shares PEDro's passion for collaboration and knowledge dissemination, I'm proud to contribute to the continuance of this vital mission by the Diagnostic Test Accuracy Database. So PEDro Canada, which I lead, and I have collaborators, and among us is also Christian Longtin, which I'd like to acknowledge. Christian leads the monthly update of DiTA. So we are proud to ensure that we continue to build on the foundation of excellence that was undertaken by the founders of PEDro. And I hope that collectively we can continue to empower professionals and enhance the quality of care for the communities we serve. So thanks again. I'm very proud to be part of this organization. 25 years is a great milestone.
My topic was to talk a little bit about real world. So up until very recently, I was still working clinically in the ICU at one of our local hospitals here. And I know from my personal working with patients how beneficial it was to have the resources of PEDro available. But also in terms of other folks, not just working with patients and the evidence, but using the best evidence, which has been mentioned before, to influence decision makers in the healthcare system. So again, I've been around enough to know that it was the time when, oh, physio doesn't work about this or that. But having the evidence there to build those arguments has been instrumental. I have the privilege to sit on the World Physiotherapy Education Committee. And so I also see sort of the big spectrum of education across our wonderful world. And having PEDro really helps to democratize information. The digital divide isn't there as severely for different places. And also having it in multiple languages is very important. I work in a bilingual French-English university, so it's formidable. And so félicitations and thank you for all your hard work. And here's to another 25 years.
Right now, we are very proudly funded by the Physiorthopedia, which I think we may have someone from there here, which is a company on online courses and online post-graduation program. And they fund us through our podcast. We have a podcast called the Physio Frontiers. The podcast is in English, so everyone can access, but it's directed to Brazilian physios in a sort of way. And we had, of course, the #1 episode. The first one was with Annie Mosley about the PEDro database, and then we have a few other international speakers, Chad Cook, Peter Sullivan, Steve Kemper, and many others.
Our practices are very similar across the world. I know that one thing I'd like to highlight maybe a little bit differently is that I've been teaching evidence-based practice since we, kind of in the US, we moved from a master's to a clinical entry-level clinical doctorate degree. And we have been incorporating PEDro since we started doing that. And that's been over 20 years. So pretty much since the inception of PEDro, the US, we have been listing it. It's in all of our major textbooks, in several of our, I teach in a wide variety of venues in the profession of PT. And PEDro is consistently listed. And I think, in the US, we do have our own kind of an evidence-based practice resource, but it's housed within our association, and you have to be a member to access that, which only about 25% of people are members. So thank you for offering this free resource again. And also, you're the only resource, really the only accessible search engine that provides a rating scale, which of course is so important. So thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to how we can be more involved as chair of the evidence-based practice section.
And this is a shared journey. So these are just keywords about the utility of PEDro. So this is not research, but I asked for some students of ours to talk about the perceived utility, and this was about platform to it helps them to with the decision-making process, quality of evidence, physiotherapy implementation.
To the strength of PEDro, that it's a broader contribution to the physiotherapy community that goes beyond the database. And I think one important thing that happens behind the scenes at PEDro is that it's a really strong support for early and mid-career researchers. And I think that's really an applause to the leadership team of PEDro that really supports the community around them and gives opportunities for many of the researchers that are starting to continue to contribute to PEDro and build their career around this incredible resource for our profession.
Thanks so much, Stephen. I mean, what an impressive presentation, and so amazing to be sitting here in the room and online with the founders, who actually I'm of a similar vintage, I'd have to say. And while I was sitting at my desk, they were changing the world. So, congratulations on what you've done there. The impact across the world is amazing. And I'm really interested to understand, what is the vision for PEDro for the next 25 years? I hear some great comments from you in China, that you really could help amplify and accelerate the message of PEDro and therefore improve the level of education. But what are the real vision for what you have for the next 25 years? And I suppose I should address that to Geraldine, should I? As well as some insights from the founders.
Thank you, Jane, for that excellent question. So as Chris said, really potential for AI, we're really keen to explore how that could help make the processes more efficient. We're also really keen for any suggestions and support from everyone here in the audience and online. We really do all need to put our heads together to work out different ways of funding PEDro, whether that's more donations, whether that's more advertising, whether that's more different organisations, and whether it's more volunteers helping out with aspects of PEDro.
Hi. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to say a massive congratulations to everyone who's involved. Of course, the 5 founders, and mostly for all you've done, and congratulations to Geraldine for taking on the mantle. It really is a fantastic achievement and story, and of course you're so proud, and you should be, and I can see so much for the future with it as well. It's a great model. Well done.
Hi there. Great event, and it's Jenny Allison, and I think it's a wonderful, as I reiterate what everyone said. But what I was delighted to hear, Rick, is that the APA is going to continue to support PEDro, because I think all of us as members of the APA really value PEDro, and as we all pay our annual subscriptions, it's nice to know that some of that will go to support PEDro. I don't know what other international physiotherapy groups do support PEDro, but I just think that it's maybe something we could talk to and see. And Alice, lovely to see you, Alice, in China, as you often are. But I think that's another great space for PEDro to be supported, because there's a huge amount of interest in research in the Chinese physiotherapy groups. But I've been there with you, and I know that there's a hunger for these kind of things. So I think that was another opportunity. But it'd be interesting to know what other associations are supporting PEDro and how we can encourage that. Yeah. So congratulations, everyone, though. That's really what I wanted to say. It's stunning. And I grew up with these people too, although I'm a little bit older, but it's phenomenal what you've done. So thank you.
Just a quick reflection. When you talk to developing countries and other physio associations across the world, COVID's had a big impact on their sustainability. And as a result, their ability to donate is really difficult, even their ability to contribute to the World Physio Association. I know this is a very an issue that PEDro needs to think clearly about, and the APA has their back, but we do need a lot of other associations, not just supporting PEDro from in-kind, but we need their financial contributions to support PEDro's sustainability into the future.
Sorry, Rick, but what about the first world countries that use PEDro?
They need to consider what they can do as well moving forward.
Thank you.
Super, thank you. I wanted to thank you and Geraldine, you for your efforts, and Geraldine for organizing today, and also thank all of our speakers and our attendees for celebrating PEDro with us today. Together, we've built an incredible resource, and with your continued support, we look forward to the next 25 years and beyond. Thank you for joining us in celebrating, and we look forward to working together in the future.